This is a series that I am beginning today entitled Laws That Bless. Laws That Bless. Here from Exodus chapter 20, when the law was given. And notice verse 1, and God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. Now this is just the first law that he has given us. You shall have no other gods before me. God had to establish the law. He had to lay down the law for his people. And let me just tell you, if there are more than one person in any proximity, you need law in order to have order. That's why those two go together, law and order. I mean, when a man and a woman come together in a relationship, there have to be some laws that are established. And you don't find a need for law until people have violated law. I mean, a girlfriend and a boyfriend go out somewhere together, and he talks to her in a way that she does not find to be respectful. And all of a sudden, when they get alone, she's like, don't ever talk to me like that again. I'm not your child. And you have to lay down the law so that you can dwell together peacefully. Because if there are not laws that are established, then you don't know what is an expectation, what my boundaries are. There have to be things that set a law so that we can get along with one another peaceably. Because we are so different, and we will violate the rights of others if we don't have a law. And so we have to have a respect for one another. You could call the Ten Commandments God's prenuptial agreement. Before he really comes in, there's a prenup, as it were, where there is an establishment of certain expectations that this is the way that this must be. So wherever there is more than one person, there has to be the establishment of orders, of law, so that there can be order. And this is why he gives us the law. God gave his people the law not to punish them, but to bless them. This is one that actually sets and establishes order. There has not always been law. There's not always been law in Scripture. There was a time, at the time of Abraham, they didn't have a law. Where there is no law, there is no transgression of the law. And so things are all right as long as you only have 3 or 4 people. But can you imagine when you get 3,000 or 4,000? You've got to have the law, because more people are going to trespass. It's one thing when you're dealing with 1 or 2 children, but when you have a dozen children, everybody can't talk to you at the same time. Everybody can't all be served at the same time. There's going to have to be establishment of law so that you have order. And every culture of ancient Middle East it had laws so that there could be order. The Code of Hammurabi is perhaps one of the most famous of all of the early law codes. The law of Hammurabi established, they stabilized and promulgated the standard by which the king intended to order society. Now, up until that time of the Code of Hammurabi, the law was essentially at the whim of the king. And so if the king didn't like something, he issued a decree, and so it was. It was just at the whim of the king. And can you imagine if you got some egomaniac who is in office making all of the laws that they could just run over a society, run roughshod all over us, and we would be in a very precarious position because we are at the whim and there's nothing that begins to govern us. So until Hammurabi, law was essentially at the whim of the king. But Hammurabi, who was the king of Babylon, actually made a giant leap forward in the history of public jurisprudence. And so he bound himself and the citizenry to 272 statutes which he had inscribed on a pillar that was more than 14 feet high for all of the kingdom to see. And so the Code of Hammurabi, as it came to be known, brought law and stability to the land. And for the first time, royal decree ceased to be simply arbitrary. For the first time, people were allowed to even know the laws under which they would be governed and judged. Wouldn't it be something for you to just be judged by something and you didn't even know exactly what the law was? Can you imagine the chaos that would ensue if there were absolutely nothing in place to establish law and order? What kind of a crazy world it would be if everybody just did what they wanted to do when they wanted to do? Can you imagine how much reefer you'd have to smell? I mean, some of you smell a lot of it anyway. I know the story is that it relaxes you. And can you imagine how people would get drunk because they were feeling good or they were feeling blue and they got drunk and then they've got to drive and now they endanger me because they are then violating law? You see, and here's the deal. Wherever there is an absence of love, there has to be an abundance of law. The more that people love each other, the less law you have to have. And that's why when Jesus came, and we'll get to that, that when Jesus came, he gave us 2 laws that really superseded all of the other 10 commandments, basically, because if you had these, he said, on these 2 hang all of the law and the prophet. And Israel had over 600 different laws to try to obey. It was a lot of law to try to obey, but there had to be an established order, because when Moses came into being, they did not have a government that was leading the children of Israel. They had gone out on their own, so he not only had to be a pastor as a shepherd, but he had to actually provide a form of government, so that was known as a theocracy, which is the rule of God on the earth through a man or through a woman. And that's a theocracy. It is an order of government where God is bringing a declaration down through a human being to express his will in the earth. And we see an inkling of it in Judges chapter 17 and verse 6, what happened. It describes the anarchy that ensues whenever there is no law. It says, in those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Can you imagine what our world would be looking like today if everybody did what was right in their own eyes? I mean, people just strip their clothes off and some of them do that anyway. In their own eyes, and they just do what's right in their own eyes. So there has to be law. I mean, one of the biggest things that affects couples is when they start arguing over the temperature, because it invariably, in every relationship, somebody is hot and the other person is cold. Somebody's trying to save money, and it's in summertime, they want you to have the house burning up, trying to save 2 cents per hour. And they saying, cut this other thing down, there's money going out the window. And somebody is hot, and all the time the other person is cold. And then they're in the bed, and the other person is all wrapped up in a blanket and got a comforter on them, got their socks on. Another person got the covers kicked off, half naked. I mean, different temperatures. But you know that's what happens in the atmosphere. Up when a cold front meets a warm front, that's what causes a storm. When a cold front and a warm front meet, then we get thunder and lightning because of 2 different temperatures. That's what happens in a relationship. There has to be some understanding. I mean, I remember in the first church that I pastored, they had a thing on there, do not touch the thermostat. Because somebody would be hot and another person would be cold, so they had to just say, listen, this is going to be the temperature that we're going to keep this thing at 72 or whatever it was. And for some people, it was too hot, and you see other people just fanning, and you see the same person is fanning, and somebody else will have on a knitted blanket, that they had crocheted. And so... And so there has to be an established order, because you just can't have everybody coming in and turning it up and turning it down, because you're going to have storms constantly that are happening. So there has to be the establishment of law so that you respect one another. You respect their territory, you respect their feelings, you respect their right to be able to have things a certain way, and making sure that you are not imposing your will and way on another to enslave them. So you have to imagine what that would be like. I mean, we can't even play sports without rules. Can you imagine a person trying to play baseball and they say, oh, no, you have to catch it 3 times in order to put me out. No, I'm going back and hit it again because I'm going to get to third base. And you got a person just making up the rules as they want to make the rules. And then another person who's running down a football field, and then they run out of bounds, and then they say, oh, no, 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 oh, no. No, as long as I get there, I don't care how far to the left or to the right I have to go. Can you imagine how crazy life would be if we just lived where everybody made up the rules? That's how crazy our world would be without the law. So God gave us a law. And so at least 400 years after the Code of Hammurabi, Moses gave a band of wanderers another set of laws to live by. And these laws embodied the mind of God for them. They carved them into the society, and it carves them into a unique society for its adherence, not to the law of Moses, but to the law of God. And these laws were irrevocable and unchangeable. Irrevocable means that you cannot call it back. And so these laws were irrevocable and unchangeable, and they were to be written on the minds and in the hearts of the Hebrew community for all time to come. But here's what happened. Today, the 10 Commandments suffer with what I call familiarity. We know them so well that we hardly know them at all. And the question is, how did we get away from the commandments? How on earth did we get away from the commandments? The renowned preacher and author George Buttrick, he came upon a farmer one day who had just retrieved a lost sheep. And Buttrick asked the farmer how the sheep wander away. And the farmer answered, they just nibbled themselves lost. They just nibbled themselves lost. They're just eating and they're just wandering, and they go from one patch of grass to another patch of grass to another patch, and they nibble themselves lost. I know sheep today who are eating the blessings of God, and they are nibbling themselves lost, and they wake up in a field somewhere. And you know how they do that? How they get lost? It's because they were so busy nibbling, eating the provisions and enjoying the blessings of God, they never looked up to thank the God from whom all blessings flow. And as long as you look at God, God becomes our anchor. He becomes our north star that keeps us grounded, that keeps us located. But as long as you're looking down here on the earth in carnality, trying to see a relationship that you can finagle, somebody else that you can get over on, somebody else that you can bring into your network and manipulate, and all of this, as long as you are looking at things that are dirty and earthy and carnal and sensual, and you're not looking up, lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and then the King of glory shall come in. And when we begin to then look up and lift up, then you'll see the God from whom all blessings flow. It is the same as a person. I had one of my relatives that was out on the ocean and out on a float and just lying there on a beautiful, sunny, unclouded day. And little did they know that they were drifting further and further out, and they couldn't feel it. They thought they were still maybe 30 or 40 feet away from the shore. And when they looked up, they couldn't see land. Panic ensued. And here's the question: how did I get out here? It's the same thing that happens every time that you go. Have you ever been in a fancy restaurant on top of a building, and it has a revolving floor, and it makes a revolution perhaps one hour? And it's turning so slowly that you don't even realize that you're being turned. See, the devil's greatest virtue is patience. And if he can turn you away from God's law little by little, just a little bit. Our politicians, when they make laws, if they made laws drastically where they are taking it away all at once, we would put up a great fight. But they know if they do it little by little. So if they're going to take away a tax benefit, guess what they'll do? They'll have a 5-year phase out, where you can only claim 80% this first year, and then 60% the next one, and then 40% here, and then 20% here, and then it's phased out. And if they do it gradually, nobody will ever notice. I had a friend, pastors a powerful church today. When he first went into his church, the podium was not centered in the church. It was over to the right side. And so he immediately took the podium from the right side and brought it to the center. Why did he do that? The head deacon came. And he said, "Excuse me, Pastor, this podium belongs over here." And he had to drag it back over there and had to preach from the right-hand side where the podium was. Here's what my friend did. He took the podium and literally every week he moved it 1 inch. It took him nearly a year for him to get the thing to the center of the church. But nobody noticed because it was gradual. See, when the first time that he did it, it was all of a sudden. But he did it gradually. It's amazing how you can wake up and find your life in such degeneration and debauchery, and you wonder, how did I get here? How did I leave my simple innocence of where I really was in love with God, and now I have come to sleeping around, and I've done things that I never thought that I would do. How in the world, how did I get here? How did I get here? And I started off so innocent, so passionately in love with God, and I never thought that that could have happened to me. I guarantee you this, it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual thing. See, the devil gets us to do it gradually. It's just miss one here, and then miss one there, and then the next thing you know, you're totally out of fellowship, and you realize it's been a long time. So he does his things gradually, and that's how we nibble ourselves. And we've got a whole society today that has nibbled itself away from the law of God to give us order in our relationship. We're in a love relationship with God, and God is saying, listen, if this relationship is going to work, we're going to have certain rules by which we are respected. And God has given us the first one and said, listen, I'm the Lord your God. Before you can lay down the law, you must establish your authority, because unrecognized authority is no authority at all. And so if you've got somebody that just walks in your life one day and just come in and say, you know what, I've got some boxes over there. Go over there and move these boxes and put them over here in this place. Your first question is, who are you? You're not my boss. You're not my mama. You're not my daddy. Who are you to tell me? So when God starts off, he starts this thing off telling us, I am the Lord your God, the God who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other God before me. And God establishes his authority. He's essentially saying to us, I am the eternal parent. I'm the parent of humanity. And he establishes his authority. It is the same way that when a parent lays down the law in the home, we said, listen, I'm the one that birthed you. I sat up with you when you were sick at night. I had to wipe your nose. I had to bathe you. I'm paying all of your bills. I'm feeding you. And listen, I told you to take the trash out. You go take the trash out. But you had to establish your authority by reminding them, I brought you into this world, and I will take you out of this world. I am the Lord thy God, little L, little g. You have to establish your authority. You have to establish your